Now we're out here today in the pleasant 90-degree heat and humidity. It's one of those days. And you know, that's end of July, early August is this time. We get thunder showers, we get infrequent rains, but we get timely rains. And that's what you can count on typically in August. We're out here on our new plots. We've given you the story of this new land that attaches to the rest and how we're making these plots. And really, I'm using my easy no-till method that I've used since the late 90s. That involves, you know, there's a few goals we have today for this seeding, but one, we have to plant into a weed-free environment. So what we've started doing, we use the easy no-till. I started spraying this when the weeds were 8 to 10 inches high, right around mid-April, late April, sometime around there. And so that was that first spraying. We used 2 quarts per acre glyphosate, 1 pint per acre of 2,4-D. Now this field hadn't been planted in about 13, 14 years or utilized in any way. So we had a lot of patches of gray dogwood like this. So I've literally driven through these several times to spray them and kill them. We've sprayed 3 times throughout this entire process because again, we have to get this weed free. If we're not making this weed free, then really what's the use? We have to get this weed free. You know, and I understand there's those of you out there that don't want to use chemicals. Our option here was to bring in a heavy tractor, plow, disc, could have been a chisel plow, disking to kind of smooth out the soil, and then repeat that several times so that we actually get rid of the weeds. Even if we just chisel plowed 2 or 3 times, disc several times to set these weed back. Well, you can see a lot of this area, and this is crown, this is a ridge right here, a point, and it's sloped. We open this up when we have those heavy rains like we have in the last couple months, we risk soil erosion. So on one hand, we have soil erosion, we're drying out the soil, we're destroying this top layer of the soil by disking, tilling, plowing repeatedly over and over, or we can come in here and spray 3 times, get our weeds under control. And don't ever fool yourself. If you have weeds in the summertime, deer might prefer that weedy field. They like the browse, the diversity, the variety of growth that they can eat. But boy, don't make any mistake. When it gets into the hunting season, all those weeds die. And if you have 50% weeds in your plot, you're going to have 10%, 20% the volume and attraction in your fall plots. And again, you don't build deer herds in June, you build them in November. So really important, we control weeds and we do it and we assess that balance of using heavy, expensive equipment or like we have with the easy no-till method. We sprayed this 3 times, mid-April, end of May, end of June, and now we're at this point right now where we have a few weeds left. And I'm gonna make sure these are dead too. This is a new plot. I don't want any competition for the food that's coming in here and growing here for the seeds that I planted. You can see out here, even here we have corn growing. We've sprayed this 3 times. We had Brandon from First Choice Food Plots come out here and a friend of mine, he drilled this in. He was back here for 20 minutes to a half hour at the most, drilling this in, just in and out. We don't, again, want to work up the soil. We don't want to do anything to it. In that corn right there, we'll add 100 to 150 pounds of rye per acre in the spring. We'll build up the soil. That'll be good thatch to plant corn into next year. We're using nitrogen on this. We use plot start on this. So we're really trying to correct the soil, putting nitrogen back in the soil with the rye, controlling weeds with the rye in the spring. So ultimately we can limit the amount of sprayings that we complete. And on this, of course, next year, this will translate and transfer into my ultimate no-till where we're using buckwheat, growing that during the summertime and then planting into it. And you can check out Ultimate No-Till food plots. And that's something I originated back in the early 2000s. It's a great method, and that's what we continue to use to this day on my food plots in Minnesota and Wisconsin. So goal number 1, eliminate weeds. Define this plot. You can see we've driven over the gray dogwood over here. We've created this. I'm actually going to open this more up this year. Now, number 2, we have to really look at timing. If I would have come in here and tried to plant a spring plot in this, we would have had too much weed competition, too much seed for the young growth, and it would have been a failure. So we're focusing on late July, early August. It's late July right now. Timing as far as time of the year where we get more rain as the season progresses going into the fall now. Right now we have a 55% chance of rain tomorrow. We have a 65% chance of rain on Wednesday. On Saturday we have a 55% chance. On Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday the following week we have 30, 30, 30. And by the Friday the following week, we have another 65% chance. There's a big temperature front coming through. So when you see that volatility in the forecast, someone asked me this morning, when do you choose to plant? Well, when I see that volatility over a 2-week period, from extreme temperatures. We have temperatures in the next 2 weeks all the way up to 97, 98 degrees, 96, 98, and then all the way down to 72. So when you see that volatility and that humidity level in those cooler airs competing and colliding, you get rain, you get a lot of thunder showers. So I want to take advantage of that right now. If we get good rain, decent over the next couple weeks, then the plants that are growing out here can withstand 2-3 weeks of drought. They'll be well established and we'll get rain eventually. Been doing that. I've had one crop failure due to drought in Wisconsin since 2002 when it comes to brassica, and that was last year. We actually had slate germination, and then we had drought for 3.5-4 weeks. It just completely toasted out everything. Very unusual. Again, it's 2021 right now. That was the first drought, first failure since 2002, and going back to my brassica days in the UP of Michigan, even through 1998, that's the one failure I've had on brassica due to drought. So it really doesn't happen very often, especially when you watch the moisture patterns. So we're looking at timing. I can't mix rye and other seed varieties with the peas, light oats, beans, peas, anything that we're putting in here, because the rye takes away from that volume. Rye should be planted more like early September around here. So the timing for the rye is still 6 weeks away, so that means we can get some green goodies in here right now. What's worked for me many times over, half of this plot is planted in brassica, so 25% of this field, 50% in corn, and then we have 25% over here. And I'm looking at, we have to have that great timing with the rain, time of the year. We want to control weeds. And then third, I want plants and varieties that can offer a green base. On this other half over here, we have a brassica blend over here. Enhanced it with tillage radish. I like doing that because that tillage radish is going to go into the soil. It's going to burrow down. It's going to lift up the soil. That's why they call it tillage radish. And it's going to create nitrogen pockets in the soil for next year for our crops to tap into as we rotate these two. On this side though, the green blend, it's all about getting seed varieties that are going to germinate by just throwing it on the soil. And it looks like a lot of thatch here, but when you look closely, this soil right here is just right there. So these seeds go straight down on the soil when we're planting them. We don't have to worry about seed to soil contact, but what we do have to worry about is something like bean. Has to be covered up 1/2 inch, 2 inches deep with soil or thatch. We can put that under a buckwheat, but we don't have buckwheat out here this year. If we would have tried to plant that in early June, it would have been a failure due to the weeds and the thatch that's here. However, this time of the year, buckwheat does really well on soil and it germinates very fast. Light oats, I don't want to do more than 50 pounds per acre. So what we did out here is we did a mix of 50 pounds per acre of oats, 50 pounds per acre of buckwheat. We're going to get cooler temperatures sometime in September over the next couple months. It'll limit the growth in the buckwheat. But what I find is the buckwheat, when you plant it this time of the year and all the weeds are dying towards you get to the end of the summer, then they'll hit that buckwheat a lot harder than they do in June and July when there's so much green and forage in the woods and growing. So buckwheat is great right now. They'll browse on it more appreciable than they would in June. Then we have the light oats as more of a cover crop. I actually stuck tillage radish in here because although I don't like putting brassica in the same field 2 years in a row, and tillage radish is a brassica, it's okay for this year. We'll do it next year. We'll have a brassica blend on this half instead of this half. And then we'll do that every other year rotation, where it's okay to go 2 years in a row. But if you're rotating, you might as well just rotate every year. And that way you're never putting brassica more than 1 year in a row. Starting out though, I've used tillage radish with great success on the whole thing. And again, we're trying to build the soil. But back to this green blend right here, 50 pounds per acre of buckwheat, 50 pounds per acre of oats. And then we've used about 5 pounds per acre, 6 pounds per acre of tillage radish. Not a full boat, 15 pounds per acre planting, but enough to improve the soil and get back to the soil. And then finally, I'm putting at least 100 pounds of peas per acre in this mix. The peas need a lot of moisture to germinate. They're a very tough, hardy seed. Think of it as a giant clover seed. Needs a lot of rain though. It'll sit here until it does germinate, and it's a quick grower. Looks like a cylindrical little patch of clover, little growth of clover. And 100 pounds per acre is usually a minimum of what I like to use within any of the mixes. So we have tillage radish out here, buckwheat, very light oats, and then the peas. And what's great about all those is they don't compete with each other. And that's very important. You don't want competing varieties. And what's really great about those green blends is they're going to be browsed on heavily. I want the deer to leave the brassica alone that's right over here on this half. I don't want the deer eating the corn, nipping on the corn. And so that boils down to this green blend right here that's early season candy crop. They love the young buckwheat, they love the young peas, they'll even nibble on some of the oats, and they certainly love the young buckwheat. So buckwheat, peas, tillage radish, they'll eat that. Here, let me start that part over. Okay. So we have the young candy crop over here. We'll have buckwheat, tillage radish, light oats, and peas. Deer love that. I want them to feed on this, leave the rest alone. And then what's great is they browse that pretty heavily. And you have to excuse the sweat right now. It's one of those days, and but we're trying to get as much done as possible. About that time that is getting hit really hard and weeds are really dying towards Labor Day, then I'm adding that rye layer over the top of it. So that rye layer is going to be great. If the brassica fails for some reason, I'm putting 200 pounds per acre of rye over in the brassica half, 200 pounds per acre of rye here. I don't think the brassica crop will be a failure. So I'm not really planning on that or worrying about it, but if it does, I'll just throw rye on it and enjoy the season. We're setting ourselves up next year for the ultimate no-till. This will all be soil out here. You can see a lot of the trees, some of the islands we have out here, a little bit of growth. I actually have a strip planted behind that island right there. So we'll eventually clean this up next year, but I wanted to define this 2.25 acre plot this year just by spraying, using the easy no-till. And ultimately, we're able to do this with very little time spent. I'm sure Dylan and I have spent more time shooting videos up here this year than we've actually had into spraying and seeding. And of course, this area over here, we sprayed. Brandon came in here for 20 minutes, a half hour, but it's all about efficiency. If we didn't have the corn, we just split this right down the middle, and I'd plant that whole half in brassica and this whole half in the green blend. The green blend, again, what we're trying to accomplish here is something highly attractive. We want to build the soil. We want to establish that ultimate no-till that we can come out here, and it's all about efficiency. That tillage radish in the soil, it's been sitting here for 12, 13 years, and it's been dormant. Nothing's been happening to it. No one's regenerated it, burned it, plowed it, disked it. We can lift up the soil, improve the soil on the entire area. We're putting winter rye in the corn over there in the spring. So overall, we're controlling weeds, limiting weeds. We're making sure we get this in at the right timing so we can catch these rains. And you can bet, this is something, again, you know, I say I've been doing this since the end of the 90s, early 2000s. You hear me say that kind of stuff. I say that for one, to show you how long I've been doing this and practicing with this, and how I help my clients, you know, over 1,100 clients now where I've designed their food plot programs for. But I say that because when you're looking at this in 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and I say it's 20 years ago I started this, or 22, I want you to know it was the end of the 90s. Maybe it's 30 years by then, who knows, by the time you're watching this right now. We try to create content that lives on YouTube so that it can help you for years to come, not just the moment we put it out this week. And then that next level, we have my most recent web class, How to Plant Food Plots. We cover this in here right now, and we cover all the other planting methods that we're using across the farm and over into Wisconsin, where we've had our plots since 2014 now. We talk about the methods that I use up in the UP in Michigan on very poor sandy soil and limited growing seasons. There's always something that you can do efficiently, effectively, while you're controlling the weeds, building the soil, and oh, by the way, giving yourself an ability to actually be the herd influencer in the area, because you have quality plots that are diverse and are holding attraction, nutrition, and volume for the entire season. I hope this makes sense, but boy, I would guess, I'm just off the top of my head, that in planting and spraying out here for 2.25 acres, 2.5 acres in this total time for the entire year, I can guarantee we don't have 3 hours into it, but I'm thinking more like 2.5 hours altogether. And that includes even cutting down some trees out here with the saw and throwing them off to the side. We'll do that more next year. A lot you can do in a short amount of time. It just involves timing and making sure you control your weeds, and start that in the spring, not midsummer. Because if you start in midsummer and this weed debris is 3-4 feet high, you're not going to be able to accomplish your goals and plant these larger seeds and get good germination rates. Follow along, because we'll be hunting right back there. I think we're going to use a Family Traditions tripod stand behind this sumac and gray dogwood clusters. We have switchgrass along the power lines right there. An entire strip that's about 30, 40 feet wide we can use for access that's coming in. It'll be great next year. So this is a work in progress. I hope you enjoy it, but I can guarantee you we're gonna find success this fall out here, at least with how everything grows. We'll see how the hunting goes, but we'll bring that to you in the future.